The sun dipped low over the Malibu coastline, casting the sky in warm hues of pink and gold. Inside her elegant living room, Elizabeth Anderson made the final touches to her New Year's Eve setup. A pristine white tree adorned with silver ornaments stood by the window. On the dining table, candles and vintage candlesticks complemented the polished dinnerware. Everything had to be picture perfect. "Alex, move the light a little to the left," Elizabeth directed, brushing back a strand of her dark hair, subtly streaked with gray. "Let's try a shot through the wine glass. It'll add a unique touch." Her husband's 17-year-old nephew, Alex, adjusted the lighting equipment, his camera poised. Over the past 6 months, he'd grown adept at fulfilling Elizabeth's vision for her lifestyle blog. "Aunt Liz, how about adding warmer tones?" Alex suggested, lowering the camera. Elizabeth smiled warmly. "You're absolutely right, sunshine. That's why you're my favorite photographer." From his home office, James Anderson watched the scene, his mind half-focused on a corporate dispute. He found his wife's dedication to her blog amusing. 45,000 followers hardly seemed worth the effort she poured into it. But if it brought her joy, who was he to judge? At least Alex had found something to occupy his time after losing his parents. Elizabeth poked her head into James's study. "Don't forget, the Bennetts are coming tomorrow. I even ordered your favorite Christmas pudding." James nodded. His wife looked remarkably youthful for 45, thanks to regular exercise and spa visits, or so she claimed. Watching her made Alex's heart race, though he tried to hide it. Working with her had become both a dream and a struggle. Every accidental touch, every request to fix her outfit, made it harder to keep his feelings in check. Later, Elizabeth reviewed the photos on her laptop. "These are perfect," she said, selecting a few for a post about family and the holidays. James smirked as he heard her dictating captions. The candles were supermarket buys, and the sweater she wore belonged to a friend. But to her audience, it all had to look flawless. That evening, Alex retreated to his room. A notification popped up on his phone. Elizabeth had tagged him in her latest post. Opening the photo, he froze. Her eyes seemed to pierce through the screen, her lips slightly parted. The caption read, "It's special to have someone who understands you without words." In his office, James closed his laptop with a sigh. Tomorrow was a big day. Meetings in the morning, a dinner party at night. He didn't notice Elizabeth slipping into the bathroom, typing a message. "The photos turned out amazing, just like you." "Good night, my talented boy." Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere nearby, a clock ticked toward Christmas. No one in the Anderson home realized that this would be their last holiday together. Outside, the waves crashed against the shore, indifferent to the secrets hidden behind the family's polished facade. The sky over Malibu was fading into twilight, soft and calm. James sat in his office, staring at Elizabeth's open laptop. His hands shook as he scrolled through messages. Each one hit like a punch. Pictures of his wife, private and revealing, sent to Alex. The captions stung the most. "For your eyes only." "Have you seen my phone?" Elizabeth's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, her smile polite but distant. For a moment, she didn't feel like the woman he'd known for years. "No," James replied, shutting the laptop hard. "It's probably upstairs." The day dragged on. James went through the motions of holiday prep, watching as Elizabeth and Alex exchanged fleeting touches and glances. Every interaction between them felt charged now, and James couldn't unsee it. "Have you seen my phone?" Elizabeth's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, her smile polite but distant. For a moment, she didn't feel like the woman he'd known for years. "No," James replied, shutting the laptop hard. "It's probably upstairs." The day dragged on. James went through the motions of holiday prep, watching as Elizabeth and Alex exchanged fleeting touches and glances. Every interaction between them felt charged now, and James couldn't unsee it. By evening, the house buzzed with guests. She whispered. "Oh, we're just getting started," he said, his tone icy. Another slide appeared. Photos Elizabeth had sent to Alex. "And here we have my 45-year-old wife's special moments shared with my 17-year-old nephew." He let the accusation linger. "That's a crime, by the way." The guests murmured in shock. Alex stood frozen, his face white as a sheet. "And here's another gem. James continued, clicking to show Elizabeth's search history. How to divorce your husband. Hiding assets. How to get rid of someone without suspicion. Elizabeth straightened, her pale face now flushed with anger. You want a scandal, James? Fine, I'll give you one, she snapped. Yes, I slept with him. At least he made me feel alive. Unlike you. The room fell silent. Guests avoided each other's eyes, hurriedly gathering their coats and saying rushed goodbyes. Within minutes, the house emptied, leaving only James, Elizabeth, and Alex. You've ruined everything, Elizabeth hissed, her voice low and venomous. My blog, my reputation. Your blog, James interrupted with a bitter laugh. It's always been a lie, just like you. He leaned closer, his voice sharp. By the way, I've already sent proof of your little advertising scams to your sponsors. Alex finally spoke, his voice trembling. Uncle James, Don't, James barked, cutting him off. Just don't. I took you in. I gave you a home. And this is how you repay me? He shook his head, disgust evident in his eyes. Both of you, out. You have 1 hour to pack. The clock on the wall ticked, marking the countdown to their departure. Christmas lights twinkled in the background, but the warmth they promised felt far away now. Upstairs, James poured himself another glass of whiskey. The soft, colorful glow of Christmas lights outside the window flashed rhythmically, their cheer a cruel contrast to the weight pressing down on him. Somewhere in the distance, holiday songs drifted faintly, but in the Anderson home, the warmth of the season had been snuffed out. Lies, betrayal, and forbidden desire had reduced his family to ash. He stared out into the night, unaware that this would be his final evening alive. By morning, his death would uncover something far darker than a sordid affair. A storm of secrets that would change everything. Detective Sarah Chen arrived at the Anderson residence at 3 a.m., the bitter chill of the early hours nipping at her as she stepped out of her car. The flashing red and blue of police lights painted the facade of the house, their reflection casting eerie patterns on the festive decorations still twinkling merrily. The juxtaposition was surreal, the house a picture of Christmas joy, the yellow crime scene tape pulling it into stark reality. What have we got? Chen asked briskly, stepping inside. O'Brien gestured toward the window. She says she heard a gunshot around 2 a.m., followed by screaming, looked outside and saw a woman and a younger guy running out of the house. The wife, Chen prompted, holding up one of the pictures. O'Brien nodded. And the nephew. But here's the kicker. He pointed toward the large TV on the wall, where a frozen slide from earlier that night remained displayed. Family drama, big one. Anderson accused his wife of sleeping with their 17-year-old nephew, publicly. Chen gave a low whistle. Merry Christmas indeed. Both are missing, O'Brien added. Uniforms are canvassing nearby hotels. Preliminary reports say they took off in her silver BMW. The medical examiner stepped over, peeling off his gloves. Close-range shot, .38 caliber. Estimated time of death, between 2 and 2:30 a.m. Found signs of a struggle. Defensive marks on his hands and skin under the fingernails. Looks like he didn't go quietly. Chen stood and examined the fireplace. Among the logs, something caught her eye. She reached in with her gloved hand and pulled out a gun. Got the murder weapon, .38 caliber, just like you said. Then her gaze shifted to a partially burned piece of paper. Carefully, she retrieved it. What's this? Upstairs, CSI worked methodically. The safe in James's office stood open, empty. Bills and documents were strewn across the floor as though someone had been in a hurry. O'Brien, meanwhile, questioned Maria, the Andersons' housekeeper. She clutched a tissue, her eyes red and puffy. Mr. James was always so kind, she said between sniffles. After the incident tonight, he sent everyone home. Then there was shouting upstairs. Mrs. Elizabeth was screaming about money and reputation. And Alex, he was like a son to Mr. James. After his parents died, Mr. James took him in. Maria's voice cracked, and she dabbed at her eyes. Lately, he's been spending so much time with Mrs. Elizabeth, taking pictures for her blog. I thought it was just work. Chen moved through the office, scanning the chaos. Beside the safe, a trash can held bits of torn paper. Carefully, she sifted through it. Something about the scraps felt deliberate, as if someone had tried to erase evidence, but hadn't had the time to finish the job. "Money missing from the safe," she murmured. "Shredded paper, signs of a fight. What were you hiding, James?" "Boss!" A young officer's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. Chen turned to see him standing in the hallway, holding a laptop. "There's a surveillance camera on the neighboring property. We've got footage." On the screen, a grainy nighttime video played. It showed Elizabeth Anderson dragging Alex, who seemed barely conscious, toward a car. His body sagged against her, bumping awkwardly as she struggled to shove him into the passenger seat. "Interesting," Chen muttered, leaning in. "Not exactly the image of two accomplices on the run." She straightened. "O'Brien, check every traffic camera on their likely route and monitor their bank accounts. Let's see if they left a trail." The house grew eerily quiet as the first light of dawn seeped through the windows, casting a cold, indifferent glow on the scene. The Christmas tree still sparkled cheerfully in one corner, its garlands and ornaments a cruel reminder of what this day was supposed to be. Unopened presents sat beneath it, their bright wrappings stark against the dark streaks of blood drying on the floor. "This is how it ends," Chen said, staring at the grim tableau. "A family destroyed, wrapped up in lies, betrayal, and murder." She turned to the evidence board they'd hastily assembled. "We've got two suspects," she summarized, "a wife on the brink of public disgrace and financial ruin, and a nephew facing statutory charges. The question is, which one pulled the trigger?" O'Brien finished. "Or did they both do it?" Chen nodded, her gaze hardening. "Let's find out." 12 hours after the murder, O'Brien stormed into Chen's office, holding a folder that looked ready to burst. "We've got a problem," he announced, dropping the file on her desk. Chen arched an eyebrow. "Define problem." "The forensic team just cracked James Anderson's personal laptop. Turns out he was running double books at his law firm. Forged invoices, diverted client payments. He embezzled $300,000 in the past year." Chen frowned, flipping through the folder. "That's substantial. Explains why the family was struggling despite his supposed success," O'Brien continued. "He was bleeding money in underground poker games." Chen leaned back in her chair, processing. So the perfect attorney wasn't so perfect after all. But how does this tie into the murder? "We found Alex's diary. Apparently, he stumbled upon James's financial mess by accident. Statements, fake accounts, the works. When James noticed Alex digging, he started threatening him, saying he'd cut him off and throw him out on the street if he talked." Chen pursed her lips. "And the wife?" "We found her phone in the garden," O'Brien said grimly. "It has an audio recording of a fight between her and James. Here's the gist. James mocked her affair, saying no one would believe a woman sleeping with her nephew. He called her a fraud, told her she was nothing without him, and ridiculed her for pretending to have the perfect life online." Chen tapped the desk thoughtfully. "So she's drowning in debt and keeping up appearances while her husband gambles away their money? And her blog, her livelihood, is just smoke and mirrors." "Exactly," O'Brien replied. "She was renting designer clothes and furniture, lying about sponsorship deals, doing everything she could to maintain her facade. Meanwhile, James was tightening the noose." Chen closed the file with a snap. "So we've got two people with clear motives and plenty of rage. The nephew cornered and betrayed. The wife humiliated and desperate. This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was years of resentment exploding all at once." She stood, staring at the evidence board. "Time to break this tangled web." The charred edges of James's notebook hinted at the dark schemes that had unraveled his life. Detective Chen scanned the notes, her sharp eyes catching fragments of desperate planning. Clients are suspicious, need scapegoats. The affair story might work. She lowered the pages, her mind spinning. "He was going to pin everything on his wife and nephew," she muttered, piecing the sinister puzzle together. "Frame them for the fraud, then vanish." Just as she spoke, a young officer burst into the room, breathless. "We found Elizabeth's car, abandoned outside the Delta Motel." He hesitated. "There's blood in the back seat." Chen grabbed her jacket. "Get forensics down there, now!" The motel room painted a grim picture. Bloody clothes and hastily applied bandages lay discarded. The room reeked of desperation. Security footage from earlier showed Elizabeth, battered and limping, helping a dazed Alex to the car. His shirt was soaked in blood, her face a mosaic of bruises. They fought back, Chen said, examining the overturned furniture and smeared blood trails. James didn't just threaten them, he tried to kill them. O'Brien nodded, and they defended themselves. The DNA and signs of struggle point to self-defense. On the bedside table was a note in Elizabeth's shaky handwriting. If anything happens, it's all in my old journal. He's not who he says he is. Forgive me. Chen's gut churned. Somewhere in the city, the two fugitives, injured and hunted, were trying to survive, and perhaps to uncover the truth. Hours later, in a dimly lit suburban clinic, grainy security footage revealed Elizabeth, disguised in a dark wig and sunglasses, supporting Alex. They checked in as a mother and son, victims of a robbery. The boy has a through-and-through shoulder wound, O'Brien read from the report. The woman's got 2 broken ribs and a concussion. Paid in cash. No IDs. Forensics recovered Alex's blood-soaked shirt, revealing a crumpled photo of him with his parents. The back bore a chilling message in James's handwriting. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner. Chen flipped through Elizabeth's damp notebook. Her latest entries made her breath catch. He's following us. Cameras in the house. He said their deaths weren't accidental. The breakthrough came hours later. Alex's parents' car accident years ago had been no accident. The brake hoses had been deliberately cut. Investigators linked a hefty deposit in the lead investigator's account to James. $2 million, O'Brien said grimly. That insurance money paid off his debts and funded his practice. He killed his own brother and sister-in-law for it. Chen's phone buzzed with an anonymous video link. Elizabeth's pale, bruised face appeared, her voice steady despite the anguish in her eyes. If you're seeing this, we may not make it, but the truth matters. James killed Alex's parents under orders from Michael Kowalski. He laundered money through James's practice. The flash drive has everything. It's in his encrypted archive. Password is the date of the accident. The screen cut to static, but not before revealing a familiar industrial backdrop. Chen recognized it instantly. An abandoned zone in Long Beach. Ready, Chen ordered. This ends tonight. At the industrial site, chaos erupted. Gunshots echoed as Elizabeth and Alex emerged, limping and bloodied, pursued by 2 armed men. Police! Drop your weapons! Chen yelled, her gun drawn. One man fired back but was quickly subdued. The other, Kowalski, disappeared into the maze of rusted containers. Elizabeth collapsed into Chen's arms, clutching her side. Her voice was weak but determined. The flash drive. It's all there. She handed over the small device before paramedics whisked her away. Chen stood amidst the swirling chaos, clutching the drive. Somewhere in the shadows, Kowalski was still at large, but the evidence now in her hands would expose decades of corruption and lies. For Elizabeth and Alex, this wasn't just survival, it was justice. And for Chen, it was the beginning of the end for the man who had orchestrated it all. As winter drew to an end, the consequences of the case rippled through the community and beyond. Elizabeth and Alex, once painted as villains, emerged as survivors of a malicious web spun by Kowalski and James. Public perception began to shift as their story of endurance and self-defense was revealed. The auction of the Anderson mansion symbolized the final closure of a chapter filled with pain and betrayal. Elizabeth, freed from the weight of secrets, devoted the proceeds to help families of the victims, quietly contributing to their healing. Alex, though deeply scarred, began to rebuild his life, knowing the truth about his parents had finally surfaced. Detective Chen, reflecting on the case, found solace in the fact that justice had been served, though the shadows of its complexities lingered. Kowalski's trial exposed layers of corruption and ruthlessness, ensuring that his life sentence carried the burden of countless lives destroyed by greed and power. As the final snows melted, Elizabeth and Alex prepared to move forward. Without the masks of deceit, they embraced the possibility of a life no longer dictated by others' manipulations. On the horizon was the hope of renewal, tempered by the scars of their ordeal, but illuminated by their resilience. The story of Elizabeth and Alex serves as a haunting reminder of how lies, greed, and manipulation can shatter lives, but also how resilience, courage, and the pursuit of truth can mend them. Their journey from victims to fugitives and ultimately to survivors is a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of insurmountable odds. In the end, justice was not just a verdict delivered in a courtroom, it was the unearthing of hidden truths, the dismantling of a corrupt system, and the redemption of two individuals who refused to be silenced. Elizabeth and Alex found closure not in revenge, but in the act of standing up for themselves, and for those whose voices had been silenced by a sinister network. As winter gave way to spring, their story became one of healing. Though scarred by their ordeal, they emerged stronger, carrying forward a legacy not of the pain they endured, but of the truth they unearthed. In a world darkened by betrayal, they lit a small but enduring flame of hope, proving that even in the deepest shadows, justice can prevail.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more